Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, January the 28th, and it's 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream. As usual, if you're here live with us, you have a priority to suggest topics of your interest to be discussed. I can discuss things in general. There is some limit to how deep I can go into a certain fact pattern because we're not supposed to give free consultations or consultations over a live stream. So just keep in mind, we're going to keep things general. But yes, I am very happy to discuss any topics of your interest over here. All right, and while you're still warming up, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the news. And here we have, this subject, it doesn't go away, is about Banco Master, a Brazilian bank that went bankrupt, and it is deeply entangled with people from, the government, from the Congress, and from the Supreme Court, right? So, a lot of discussions and accusations, and that's what we still have as the main headline as of today. There is also this piece of news I think is interesting to foreign citizens. It is talking about Airbnb, and in São Paulo, and this article is specific to São Paulo city. And in São Paulo, there are some developments funded by the government, by the state government, that are intended for lower income people. And guess what? Many people are getting those units, and now they're doing Airbnb. So there is this situation in which the government is chasing the owners, the buyers, saying, listen, those units are, seeking affordability in São Paulo because naturally, right, São Paulo, a big capital, the business capital of Brazil, is kind of expensive. And the government, is funding those developments, and people, instead of using for, lower income, people now, they are renting out at, tourist types of rates, right? So that's what we have over here. I think that's interesting. There is a lot of effort, and that's something we discussed in our last live stream. There is an effort at different government levels to better regulate Airbnb, right? Just because it is, in Brazil, is out of control. And, there is a need for regulation. Of course, not blank prohibition, but some regulation. So, the Airbnb universe can coexist with, the society as a whole. All right, let's take a look and see if we have any participation so far. Yes, we have a Hamilton. Welcome, Hamilton. Oi, tudo bem, Luciano? From Christine in Maui. That's Christine. Good to see you over here, Christine. When you contract with your firm, how is it decided which attorney will be assigned to your case? So it's based on the specialties, on specialties, Christine. And let's assume, right? Let's assume we're talking about real estate, right? Just as a hypothesis. Let me show you, how it works. So if you come here to our website, under our firm, you're going to see About Us. All right, and then you scroll down all the way, and then you're going to see, our team members over here. So for real estate, you can see that Paulo Salles is typically our lead resource. We have a Camila Sonior. She's actually a realtor, right? So for clients who need a property, that's Camila, that we're gonna send you to. But for the transaction itself, you would probably work with Paulo Salles and Marina Garcia, right? They typically work together. Marina specializes in currency exchange, but she also works in many of our real estate transactions. And typically, Paulo Salles would take the lead. Okay, so these are like the everyday team members would be working with you. Now, for major, for key points of the transaction, let's say the purchase agreement, right? Before a purchase agreement is approved, typically the team is going to run by me, right? So I'm going to work on, like reviewing the purchase agreement. I also review the deed when it's about, for you to close, meaning, the closing of the property. I'm also going to review, the paperwork for the closing. And, some clients, they may ask me to participate in a couple of meetings throughout the life cycle of the transaction. But those team members, they are pretty solid, right? Like, I would say that just because of how much they work on real estate transactions, they have, potentially as much experience as I have, right? So you would be in good hands if you would work, for instance, with any of our team members. Again, they specialize in different areas, right? Now, if you're gonna work on immigration projects, then we have other team members dedicated to those specialties. Aaron, hi Aaron. Itaú blocked my weekend spending account a couple of months ago with thousands in it. How common is for banks to do that? Do you think a physical branch could help? Yeah, so banks do, Aaron, like every now and then they do block accounts when they see, transactions that are typically triggering their internal controls. Itaú specifically, they use, I'm not sure if artificial intelligence, right? But they've been using algorithms, right? To detect unusual patterns. And I'm not saying that you are doing unusual pattern transactions, but that's typically how it works, right? They have a system that flags, accounts, and they are typically gonna, block the account, and then you need to work with them, right? We had a case like this, a client of ours, right? She was sending money from different accounts, right? She had this idea of using her relatives to send the money to Brazil. Horrible idea, right? We would never recommend anyone to do so. And guess what? The bank saw a bunch of incoming transactions into a personal bank account, and they were quick to block the account. We had to intervene, right? And it was a regular client of ours. Explained that she was sending the money for these real estate transactions. We shared the paperwork for the transaction, and eventually they lifted the block. But Aaron, that's typically it. They want to know what's going on, all right? General Principal, boa tarde, Mr. Oliveira. Boa tarde, General. Hope all is well with you and everyone at the firm. Thank you, General Principal. Appreciate it. Christine, yes, just read about us. Where is Paulo located? Paulo is typically in our São Paulo office, Christine. Most of our real estate team is based in São Paulo. Most of our immigration team is based in Rio de Janeiro. We also have an office in Brasilia with 2 team members as we speak. We have Sarah and we have Esther, all right? And now we are also going to have an address. And for now, it's just an address. Hopefully, it's going to be an office later this year in Florianópolis as well. All right, Christine. So Paulo is in São Paulo, and if you are, in São Paulo or dropping by, you're welcome to come over for some coffee. All right, Christine. And let me take a look at our backlog. It looks like we have this one about, this is more like feedback on the nature of an immigration process. I think, most people would have the right expectation in terms of how things should work, right? But it doesn't look like it is the same for everyone. What I'm trying to say over here is that, like, I think it was yesterday I saw, or it was on Monday actually, I saw an email, from a client to a team member saying that he was, unhappy because he didn't get like the full year on his resident card, right? And I was very surprised because like he was almost like saying, listen, you could have done a better job, right? And that was very startling to me because we got him the residency, he got the card, he was taking good care, like through literally hundreds of interactions with our team members, and he was still unhappy. And I said, listen, this person doesn't have realistic expectations, right? Like immigration is a human-based process, and at the end of the day, we don't have like control over what the immigration decides. So because there is a timeline for you to secure the card, typically when you get the card, guess what? Like the beginning or the start date for your resident card is retroactive. Okay, so the Brazilian immigration lets you stay in the country for a while until you secure the residency, but they typically assign a retroactive starting date. And because he was a digital nomad, which is just for 1 year, basically this person got a card, for something like, 7 months, right? And I said, that's not realistic, right? Like, I mean, do you think we are so powerful to control exactly how many months or how many days you're going to get in a residency, okay? So just highlighting that, and it is the same in Brazil as it is in the United States and elsewhere, right? Like there is so much we can do, to secure things for our clients, and our goal is to actually always do a diligent work, representing the interests of our clients, but it doesn't go as far as to dictate how many days you're gonna get on your resident card, right? So I don't think it was like a fair expectation, right? Maybe we are a victim of our reputation because we have a good reputation in the market, so maybe people will look at like reviews and they are going to expect like a 100% perfect process. But again, when you have a human-based process, like there is always some type of a deviation from what would be like a perfect process, right? And there are several people involved, right? Like on top of our analysts, let's say if you are starting the process, you typically will need like notarization for documents. You're going to need an apostille. You're going to need a courier. You're going to need like a cartório in Brazil to further legalize some of the documents. You're going to need a sworn translator. In addition to your analyst here at the firm, you may work with our head of immigration, who's Patrick. And on top of that, you're going to be dealing with at least like 3 people at the immigration system. One is going to be the analyst, then there is a supervisor for the analyst on the immigration side, and then there is an agent on the Brazilian Federal Police. So just right there, I probably told you about 10 different people, right? So this is a journey, and it's very difficult to have like 100% control over this whole journey. So what I tell our team or our people is to like, be genuinely invested in our clients' goals, right? And really do the best we can, giving, like this large number of parties involved in any given immigration process. All right. So I hope that makes sense. Right. Let me see what else we have in the backlog. All right. CPLP, right? So the CPLP, some people ask us about the CPLP, if they should use it or not. Like the CPLP is a type of residency specific to citizens from Portuguese-speaking countries. So if you're coming like from Portugal, if you're coming from Angola, nowadays there is the São Tomé and Príncipe, which is a tiny country that is basically selling citizenship, right? So many people say, listen, I'm not going to do much with a citizenship in São Tomé and Príncipe, but because it's a Portuguese-speaking country, they are going to have a better access to Portugal, and they're going to have a better access to Brazil. So the CPLP is basically, this special track for citizens coming from Portuguese-speaking countries. And the advantage is that, to qualify for this residency, basically you just need to be a citizen of those countries, right? So it's not like the retirement. For the retirement, you need to meet retirement income levels. For the digital nomad, you must have work abroad, right? And for, pretty much every other route, you need to meet certain requirements. For the CPLP, basically, you just need to be a citizen of a Portuguese-speaking country, and then you have access to that particular residency. Very interesting, right? And for the CPLP, typically you get 2 years of temporary residency, and before those 2 years expire, you can renew, and the renewal is going to come typically as a prazo indeterminado, right? Or an indefinite period of time, which is the funny way that Brazil is going to call a residency with a permanent intent, if you will. Okay, all right, let's see what else. Let's share here a few seconds of advertisement from our partner in Rio de Janeiro. That's Remax Nomad States, and it's based in Leblon. And they have the power of Remax to find you properties throughout the country, meaning that when you access Remax Nomad States, they can get you a property pretty much anywhere you want in Brazil. And here is the contact information. Feel free to take a screenshot and contact them as needed. All right, let's see what else. Is there a language proficiency test with the CPLP route? How much are they selling citizenship for? Aaron, that's a good question. So for the residency, you don't have a proficiency test, meaning that, just to secure the initial residency, there are no questions asked. And actually, we filed the application on behalf of our clients, right? So there is no real interaction, at least in the approval stage. Our clients are actually going to get in touch with the immigration in person only after the approval, when they are going to attend an appointment with the Brazilian Federal Police. However, Aaron, like down the line, there is a special track to citizenship that is available for those coming from Portuguese-speaking countries. And in our constitution, it says you just need 1 year of residency in Brazil. Now, what we see typically happening is like when you apply for the citizenship, the Brazilian Federal Police, which is in charge, of the interview for the citizenship process, like if you are unable to communicate, they are not going to let you proceed with the citizenship application. Okay, so some people they are going to actually, secure a constitutional attorney to file for a constitutional remedy. Typically, we call it mandado de segurança, okay? Or it could be a mandamus or writ of mandamus. I think there would be a close translation in English. But basically, you're filing, like to kind of have like a judge ordering the public administration or the federal government to allow you to secure the residency, even though you don't have like, the actual capability of communicating Portuguese. Because if you look at the Constitution, it just says, people coming from Portuguese-speaking countries. It doesn't say, and by the way, you also must speak Portuguese, right? So it's like the public administration is kind of creating and trying to enforce a requirement that is really not there, if you will. All right. And how much are they selling the citizenship for? So I think it is between 90 and 100,000 US dollars. Okay, and I don't know the specifics, Aaron, but it's very interesting because some countries, they say, like they're selling the so-called golden visa. Okay, your golden visa, you kind of buy or invest in something, and you kind of get a residency. And if things go well, down the line, you're going to be able to apply for citizenship, right? And São Tomé and Príncipe, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, again, this is outside of our expertise. You basically buying the passport, right? Like, meaning you're going to, I don't know, pay a fee to the government. The government is going to give you a passport, right? Like, so that's very rare, very rare in immigration, okay, for people to be selling passports, right? And but I know the amount is somewhere between 90 and 100,000 US dollars, and then people are going to secure this passport. And because Portuguese is the official language over there, whoever gets this passport will enjoy a better immigration pathway both in Brazil and in Portugal, right? So that's basically why people are buying a passport in São Tomé and Príncipe. Christine, okay, I may take you up on the coffee offer. I already have a purchase contract for a lot awaiting my signatures. My question is, at what point does the attorney contact the seller to assist? Christine, I would say it's shortly after you secure our service, right? And, for most people, right, whenever we have like an early consultation, I would say, listen, before you even, marry the property in your head, right, like ideally, you would have a due diligence check because, like after you buy the property in your head, it's difficult for you to walk away, right? So my recommendation is usually, even before finding the property, okay? Now, if you found the property, then yes, you can go ahead, secure our service, and then in practical terms, what our team is going to do, they are going to typically get 2 WhatsApp groups up, one WhatsApp group between us as your representative and you, right? So we can have like a very open communication. And then we're going to have a second WhatsApp group between our firm and the seller representative, right? Sometimes the seller participates directly. Most of the time, the seller will also have a representative. So there is going to be a second WhatsApp group. And our team is going to be working in those 2 WhatsApp groups and making sure things progress. Typically, sellers in Brazil, or I would say probably, everywhere, they're going to be pushing, for a sale to happen overnight. And from our perspective, this is typically not in your best interest, right? Like we need to speed it, we need to slow down the transaction a bit. So all the checks, they should be done in a diligent manner, right? Like, whenever we're going to issue for instance, title records for the property. Like we need to, request those files. It takes, a few days for them to become available, and then we're gonna review. And guess what? We are working on other stuff. Nobody's idle at the firm, right? So everything needs to be scheduled harmonically, and kind of highlighting that there is a timeline, that there is a process for that. The sellers, on the other hand, the only thing they have is like, sign and pay the money, right? So they're always pushing and asking why it's taking so long. But from a realistic perspective, I would say our team is pretty nimble with, the work. And most transactions here at the firm, after you find a property, let's say you found the property, a transaction is going to take like 90 days, right? Between the initial due diligence checks, signing the contract, other stuff that's done throughout the life cycle of the transaction until you attended the closing, and a new title is going to be issued with your name as the owner of record. All right, Christine, does your firm take care of getting the translations of documents done? So we drive everything, Christine, and we have different resources, right? Like we don't do the translation ourselves. Like there is a sworn translator who works with our firm, but we manage it, right? Like we walk you through those requirements. We tell you, listen, this document needs like sworn translation, and then we send it to the translator. He's gonna do, right? And then typically we have a reserve for those expenses and so on. But there are indeed like many document requirements for foreign citizens that are not typical for Brazilians, okay? And that's one of the reasons why, sellers and realtors sometimes they don't understand why this timeline, right? They say, well, I just had another transaction that closed in 15 days, right? But it was like, with a Brazilian buyer who had all the documents ready, like without a need for any apostilles, any sworn translations, right? Money is not coming from abroad. And so for all of those things, Christine, our team would assist you. General principle, Mr. Oliveira, related to the question above, in your opinion, what level of Portuguese does a foreigner need to reach where they no longer need a sworn translator for legal affairs? General principle, that's an interesting question, right? And this is going to depend on the registry, right? So, or cartórios, okay? So cartórios, registries, some people, they translate as notary public. I don't like the translation because notary public in the U.S., it is something that you can secure, that you can, be licensed as after studying for a weekend, probably, right? And for you to be a cartório, or let's say a Brazilian notary public, many times lawyers, they are going to study for decades, literally. I'm not talking years, I'm talking decades, right? To be able to pass a very demanding examination, right? So once there is a cartório, you have a principle that is typically called tabelião, right? And the tabelião is going to have a lot of latitude to decide on which requirements they are going to enforce and how to enforce. So when it comes to language, the question that's going to be asked is typically, listen, are you fluent in Portuguese? Okay, they're going to be asking this question, and then you need to answer. You not only need to answer that question naturally in Portuguese, but they need to hear, they need to listen to you and believe that you are actually fluent in Portuguese. Okay, now that's enforced typically in São Paulo. In Rio de Janeiro, some cartórios, they are going to enforce or not. In the Northeast, right, like in some capitals, they don't enforce. and it's going to be on a cartório by cartório basis, okay? So there is no single answer, but that's an interesting question. And just to clarify to other participants, right? When you're gonna attend a closing in Brazil, if you don't speak fluent Portuguese, you are typically required to bring a sworn translator to participate in the act, which I think it makes sense, right? Because, how can you participate in a closing if you don't understand what's going on, right? It's not just a matter of being there. You need to be there and understand what's going on. So that's the core of general principles question. Aaron, 100,000 sunk cost versus 200,000 invested in real estate doesn't sound like a great deal. That's a good point, Aaron. That's a very good point. I agree 100% with you. The reasoning that we see out there, right, we don't have any real cases so far. The reasoning goes like this. If you secure the São Tomé and Príncipe citizenship, right, in theory, you could come to Brazil, you apply, and let's say in 2 to 3 months, you get the residency, and then in just a single year, you could potentially secure the Brazilian citizenship. So the key word here is timeline, right? And if you're doing the real estate, on the other hand, in Brazil, you're going to get 4 years as temporary residency. And then after those 4 years, once you get the permanent residency, you need 4 years of permanent residency to be entitled to file for the citizenship. So is the mindset here is let's say a year and a half against 8 years. Okay, so it's a huge sunk cost. I agree. You're basically paying for a piece of paper, but the mindset here is that you're buying basically the shorter timeline, right? So you're buying, let's say, a discount of 7 years in your journey. Okay, that's the mindset that we see. But because of the uncertainties, right, and we have some large international law firms coming to us for a consultation on this topic, the friction here is that is not guaranteed, or better saying, I can almost certainly expect you to have a very difficult time when you show up for your citizenship interview without speaking any Portuguese, right? Polícia Federal, they are not going to let this through, right? They're going to say, well, if you think the Constitution says you can, get away with a single year, guess what? You're going to talk to your lawyer, not here, right? Because, naturally, right, the Brazilian immigration, just like the U.S. immigration or just like any other immigration, they're going to be protective of access, to something as, high level as the, citizenship, right? So if they can tell you are working on a kind of, or circumventing, the more traditional pathway to citizenship, I'm pretty certain that they are going to cause you problems, right? So that's the friction that we see in the São Tomé and Príncipe route. All right, what kind of rental yield and vacancy rate you seeing for properties in Leblon? Yeah, so typically 0.8% of rental on a monthly basis. And vacancy, very low vacancy, Aaron, because, Leblon is completely built out, right? Completely built out. So, typically if you have, a property with, that is well taken care of, there are no problems with the property, you can rent them out very quick, right? Leblon is a pretty unique combination of, quality neighborhood, walkability, you're closer to the local Santos Dumont Airport, you're closer to Rio de Janeiro downtown. If you want to go to Barra da Tijuca, it's also easy for you to go there. Or if you don't want to go anywhere, like you just stay in Leblon, and you have pretty much everything that you need over there, right? Like, so Leblon is pretty unique. One thing I don't like in Leblon is because, given that real estate is so, costly in this area, right? Like, gyms are horrible, okay? So, I particularly don't like to go to gyms. They're just super crowded. It's unbelievable. So you pay like a very a large amount. You pay a lot of money to be in absolutely crowded gyms, particularly during peak hours. I would say it's almost impossible to use like machines in a gym. Okay. Now, other than that, when you're going to restaurants, service providers, like if you're going to a barber, you don't have such a challenge in terms of availability of services. But there is a higher price naturally, right? Like a much higher price for things you're going to be paying on a daily basis. For grocery and other stuff, typically is the same. It doesn't change much. It's more like services and anything that needs to rely on real estate, like they are gonna be impacted by Leblon's really high cost, right? Like Leblon is like a different ball game in Rio de Janeiro. Christine, thank you for answering my questions above. You're pretty welcome, Christine. For your information, my consultation with you was 10. Already ended negotiating with one seller because they insisted on doing the escritura for less than the true price. Thanks again. I appreciate the kind words, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing here live. As you know, I cannot share myself, but if you share, I'm pretty happy with that. And yes, this thing of doing the escritura for a lower price is a very sad phenomena in Brazil. To be honest with you, is not as common as it was, like, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. Like, it's becoming less common, particularly because the Brazilian Revenue Service, like, they are catching up with technology. They are, actually capable of identifying those schemes, right? And for those of you who don't know what we are talking about, something that happens, fortunately nowadays, rarely, right, is that you're going to buy a property from a Brazilian seller and the Brazilian seller says, listen, this property is worth 1 million reais, but I wanna, register the transaction as 500. And for the only purpose of defrauding the revenue system, or like skipping on taxes, right? But just as you can easily tell, and you don't need to be a lawyer to reach this conclusion, that's a crime, right? Like, that's not just like a shortcut or a strategy. That's a pure crime, because you're buying something for 1 million, but you're using paperwork saying that you're buying for 500, and you are basically defrauding the tax system in Brazil. And this is typically that's typically asked for by the seller, right? So very rare you're gonna find a buyer asking for such a thing, but sellers, because they are gonna be paying capital gains, guess what? Let's say if they bought the property for 250,000 and now they are selling for 500, right? They are going to pay the capital gains on the difference between 250 and the 500, right? So if they're selling for 1 million, then they are going to be paying the 15% capital gains on 750,000 reais, right? Which is a substantial hit, but that's just part of the game. And unfortunately, some sellers, they are going to, try to convince the buyer, to pretend that is being sold for less. And again, this is not a strategy. That's plain crime, like fraud, right? And naturally, we never had a single transaction here at the firm. And whenever there is a seller who's pushing for that, we typically say, listen, we don't do that here at the firm. This is a no-go. Like, so you better find a different buyer. And then we basically just send this person away. Okay, very serious situation that unfortunately it still exists in Brazil. I see we have a large number of viewers. I'm very happy with the number of viewers. Like, if you could please like our live stream, that's going to be very appreciated. It is good for our business, and it does help other people just like you find our content. So take a second, you just click on the thumbs up, and I appreciate the gesture. Thank you so much. We have a Travel Jones. Welcome, Travel Jones. Gracious greetings, Mr. Oliveira. I hope things are well. They are, Travel. The same thing with you. It has been a while. Tell us, how is your journey going, Travel Jones? And let me see if we have something else from our backlog. This one is somewhat repetitive, like the digital nomad, right? Like, I renewed once. Can I renew it for a second time, right? Like, I searched on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said it's a single renewal, right? Yeah. So, ChatGPT, Gemini, they are great for many things, maybe even to get you an overall idea about a subject, but they are not 100% accurate, okay? So as of today, we have clients who are getting started on their second renewal, right? They got the first residency through the digital nomad, they renewed once, and they are renewing twice. And at least as of now, our understanding is that the current Brazilian federal administration is allowing people to renew multiple times, if you will, okay? And then many times, during our consultations, people are going to ask us, am I going to be able to renew multiple times? And then I'm going to say, listen, I cannot answer this question because, as you probably know, immigration changes very often. What I can tell you is that if you was today, you would be allowed to renew multiple times, but I don't know 1 year down the line if that's going to be the case or not, because when the federal administration changes, they also may change the understanding of a certain regulation. They could get new regulations in place. They could get rid of stuff, right? So you never know. I would say our immigration framework is not as chaotic as it is nowadays with the United States, unfortunately, but ours change very often as well. And the digital nomad, to be honest with you, is also something new, right? Like, it has been in place for just a few years. It's not like from 10 years ago. So it's also something new that is evolving as we speak. Matt Gaines, good to see you, Matt. Oi, Dr. Oliveira. I hope you and Adrian are well, Matt. Can you discuss bank deposit protections provided by Brazilian banks? Also, are you familiar with these banks, BTG and Itaú Unibanco? All right, let's start with the banks, right? Like, so Itaú Unibanco, right? Unibanco was a bank that was bought out by Itaú. So nowadays, most people would just say Itaú. And when you look at any branches from Itaú, Itaú is going to be the only brand that you're going to see. But for some reason, they still keep Unibanco in the name, okay? And Itaú is one of the largest banks in the country, is one of the 3 banks I use in Brazil. The banks I have myself are Nubank, Itaú, and Santander. These are the three banks I use, right? So Itaú is a major one and highly recommended, okay? BTG is more like of a niche bank, is, I don't know, like maybe 100 times or 1,000 times smaller than Itaú, but it is known as a nimble type of bank, offering non-resident bank accounts to foreign citizens. We don't have a formal partnership with BTG. We do have a formal partnership with other non-resident banks, right? Like banks that specialize in non-resident bank accounts, okay? But I never heard bad things about BTG, okay? I'm just not familiar with the bank, and I would guess they are fine, okay? But now Itaú, I can, talk about them firsthand, not because we have a partnership with them, but because I actually use Itaú on a daily basis. Pretty solid bank. They have an amazing internet banking system. They have a branch pretty much everywhere, and they do provide a good service, all right? So I do like Itaú. Now, an important note, Matt, for the non-resident bank account, Itaú is typically not a good choice. Just because they, like the information I have from clients is that they typically have very high demands in terms of getting a non-resident bank account, right? So let's say if you come to Brazil and you are attending an Itaú branch appointment and you say, well, I want to have a non-resident bank account. First thing, the manager who's talking to you 9 times out of 10 will have no clue about what you're talking about, okay? And then they're going to talk to someone else, maybe the back office, and then they'll say, yes, we have this account, but for you to get this account, you're going to need to keep a balance of, I don't know, 100,000 reais, right, or $20,000. Or if they are not asking you for, a really large a balance, they could be asking for a hefty monthly fee. I heard before, not from Itaú, but other banks, something like 1,000 reais a month, right? Like 180 US dollars as maintenance fee. So as a result, most people will not adopt Itaú as a bank for non-resident bank account, okay? But guess what? After you become a resident in Brazil through any route, right? Like you could acquire residency in Brazil through a digital nomad, through retirement, through marriage, right? It does not matter the route. Once you have the resident card, guess what? Then you can open a regular bank account with Itaú, and then it's a great choice, okay? I just think Itaú is not a good choice for the non-resident bank account, which is the account you can get before getting the resident card. All right, BTG does offer a non-resident bank account, and I would assume they make it much easier for you to secure. And by the way, this is a service, like this company we're partnering with, they are offering. So if you need to open a non-resident bank account, and I think they charge $100, right, which is super affordable. Brazil Safe Closing. .com, right? Like we're building a partnership with this company, and the idea is that they just provide services. How can I say? Like it's like a portal, right? Like you don't have real people like our firm to take care of you. Is more like a system-based type of service, but on the other hand, they're pretty cheap. Okay, so for those of you who are looking for price, I think you could take a look at the Brazil Safe Closing. If I'm not mistaken, the services they offer as of now are a CPF, right? Like if you need to obtain the tax ID known as a CPF, you can get a non-resident bank account open. And they are starting to do something on a real estate, basically, the more introductory checks on a property. So let's say if you just want to know if a property is viable or not, potentially they could help on that front, but they don't go much further than that. Just say, all right, this property is viable or not. Okay, at least as of now, as much as I know. All right. Okay. Christine, okay, please talk about the commission being paid by buyer in contract. Is it legal? Commission being paid by buyer. Yeah, Christine, it's legal, but it's not usual at all, right? Like, I mean, in Brazil, just like in the United States, commission is typically paid by the seller, all right? Like if they're asking you to buy the commission, they are just probably assuming like you are a rich gringo, okay? That's the rich gringo penalty, I would say, all right? Like I wouldn't, structure this way, like, and if you have a relationship with the seller and if you eventually, not saying that you're related to the seller, but let's say if it is someone who you know, if you need someone, to tell those hard truths to the seller, you can rely on our team, right? To say, listen, this is not usual, right? Like, I mean, let's have like a clean type of transaction here. Seller should pay 100% of the commission, not the buyer, all right? But it's not illegal, okay? If seller and buyer, if they agree to split, the commission for the realtors, that's not illegal by any means, okay? It's just like plain unusual, right? I would say in terms of transactions that we see this happening, maybe it is one, out of 50 batch of transactions, okay? So extremely rare, to say the least. All right, Aaron, 0.8% seems low. CDB is about 0.8% too. Is appreciation of property in Leblon big enough to offset maintenance, special assessment risk, non-payment risk, etc.? That's an interesting point, Aaron. Yes, it does sound low, particularly when you compare to what the market tells you, right? Whenever you're going to buy like off-plan in Brazil, realtors, they are going to come up with, unrealistic numbers, okay? So 0.8% is something that I see myself in many investments. And yes, there is appreciation, and that's going to help offset a bunch of things. Like CDB is high, but I don't like any type of financial investments in Brazil, just because, like there are often changes in currency exchange rates. And there were periods in Brazil when, some, crazy initiative would basically block people's money without notice, right? So there is, an ingrained risk factor whenever you are investing in financial markets in Brazil, right? Like, I mean, I don't do it, okay? Like I have a full access to all the CDBs, like the super high rates you see, and I don't do it. I don't do it because I don't believe. I don't know when it's going to be the next, craziness that is going to arise from the government. So, basically, I would rather keep investing in real estate, even though, just like you said, the perceived return, it doesn't look much, right? And it's not, again, being very transparent is not nearly as much as people are going to tell you when you're visiting off-plan properties in Brazil. They're going to talk, you have 15% return per year. I never saw that happening, okay? And if you hear this type of talk in the Northeast, run away. We have a bunch of clients, unfortunately, for our litigation services. All right, so I'm not talking about the real estate, typical real estate, all inclusive that we sell here at the firm. I'm talking about litigation. People buying, the villas, like, particularly in Ceará, and they never get anything, right? Like they pay off the entire amount. Later on, they are going to be asked for additional money to furnish the units. They don't get title. Whenever they visit, their property is going to be a property that they don't hold the keys to it. So a lot of crazy stuff out there. And unfortunately, those cases are typically clients of litigation here at the firm, all right? But yes, Aaron, and listen, this is something, more of a personal taste. We do have many clients who are going to invest in CDB, and they're pretty happy with it, right? Like, and if they're lucky, if they don't experience an exit shock, right? Like, if they are not hurt by a change of, currency rate exchange, currency exchange rate, they could be making big bucks actually, right? All right, Itaú Personalité is definitely better than regular Itaú. Yes, Aaron. So what Aaron is sharing over here is like Personalité is like, a special branch of Itaú, right? If you have like a certain income level, you're gonna get this Itaú Personalité, and then they have special branches just like for clients of Itaú Personalité. You also use a different internet bank system. You have access to a dedicated manager, and it works pretty well, right? Pretty good. Aaron is sharing. Itaú Personalité asked for an initial deposit of 250,000 reais, right? Yeah, that sounds about right. Aaron, sounds about right. All right, Christine, if time permits, please talk about the additional steps needed when a divorced American is buying property in Brazil. All right, Christine, I'm going to talk about that, and I think it's going to be, our last topic of today's live stream. But listen, I have good news. We're going to have our Sunday live stream this Sunday on February the 1st. So make sure right now you come to our, live stream schedule, and you're going to click under Notify Me, right? If you click on Notify Me, once we are starting our live stream on Sunday, and that's going to be at 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time, right? So not 12:30 as of today. It's going to be at 3:30. This Sunday, we're going to be together. And if you have any topics of your interest, just like usual, come to our live stream on Sunday, all right? So let's wrap it up by, addressing Christine's request. Additional steps needed when a divorced American is buying property in Brazil. So, Christine, there is a need for a divorce to be recorded in Brazil, but typically only when there is a Brazilian spouse in the loop, right? When we have, when there is a Brazilian abroad, let's say the Brazilian is marrying abroad, Brazilian is divorcing abroad, Brazilian is doing anything abroad, this Brazilian must register that event in Brazil. So you go to a cartório, there is a specific cartório, and then you're going to record. You're going to say, listen, my marriage in New York is being recorded in Brazil. Same thing with the divorce. But that happens only when there is a Brazilian in the loop, okay? So it does not matter if you are the Brazilian or if your ex-spouse is a Brazilian, it needs to be recorded. Now, let's say if your divorce in the United States was to another U.S. citizen or another citizen who's not a Brazilian, typically you don't need to record that a divorce in Brazil, which, by the way, is the technical term we use is homologate or homologation, right? Which is a more complex process. So assuming that your divorce was to another U.S. citizen, or again, a citizen who's not a Brazilian, typically the only thing you're going to need to do is to have like the divorce certificate and the marriage certificate, right? So just the divorce certificate is not enough. You need the divorce certificate, marriage certificate. Those two documents must be apostilled in the US, then sworn translated in Brazil, okay, and then recorded in a cartório called RTD, right? So at least 3 steps: apostille in the US, okay, sworn translation in Brazil, and then RTD cartório. Now, unfortunately, some registries, they are also going to ask you for your divorce decree. But that's going to be more like an exception, right? Like, now remember, different cartórios, different registries, they have different interpretations of the requirements. So that's why it is so common for one cartório to ask you for some things and another cartório to ask you for other things. But as a standard, when you're buying as a divorcee, you're going to need your divorce certificate, your marriage certificate, naturally from, before the divorce. And those documents need an apostille, sworn translation, RTD, and then they are typically enough for the acquisition. All right, some cartórios, they ask you for an apostilled copy of the passport. Most will be fine if you have the passport with you, as long as you attended the closing. If you're not attending the closing, let's say you're traveling to Brazil, you can make certified copies when you are in Brazil. Notarized copies in the US are not going to be enough, right? If you're going to be handling this process entirely remotely, then the passport needs an apostille in the US, sworn translation in Brazil, and then RTD. But if you are physically in Brazil, then you can just take your passport to a cartório, a Brazilian cartório, and then they are going to make cópias autenticadas, meaning like certified copies that can be used in your process. All right, so that's it for today. I want to say thank you everyone for the participations. Thank you for all of you who liked our live stream. And I hope to see you on Sunday. Again, we're going to have a live stream on Sunday, February the 1st at 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time. And wishing you a